Oh my goodness, it has happened. Ravensburger have banned Hiram Flavisham Toymaker and Fortisphere, which is a bit more controversial, and it is effective immediately. My instant reaction to this news is nothing but positivity, and I want to congratulate Ravensburger on acting quickly and making the right call for the good of the game and its player base. I think this is brilliant. I think we were entering pretty dangerous territory where I was losing interest in looking at tournament results, and I'm usually really into that kind of thing, but I was not even looking at tournament results from the past weekend. I just wasn't interested because I already knew it was going to be endless Sapphire everywhere. I'm not really wanting to watch competitive tournaments because I wasn't really finding the Sapphire-dominated meta particularly interesting. I wasn't even that interested in trying to cook up new decks which could counter these Sapphire decks because I knew that no matter what I was playing, I was going to be at a disadvantage. And Hiram Flavisham is without doubt the biggest enabler of Sapphire decks being stronger than they really should have been. And this has been the case for a very long time. Hiram Flavisham is just a fundamentally, absurdly overstated card in every single department. It draws you 2 cards when you play it, and it draws you 2 more cards when it quests. And it's got 6 willpower, making it unbelievably difficult to stop. It is just absurd. And actually, if you look at some of the most overpowered cards in Disney Lorcana, there's a bit of a common theme in my opinion, which is that they're set 2 cards. And this is, of course, Bucky, who was essentially banned already, but errated, but really he was banned by all intents and purposes. That was a set 2 card. Hiram is. I also think that Fox and Mr. Smee could be on the chopping block in the future. The biggest thing about Fox and Smee is they're not oppressive cards. They just do their job very, very efficiently. You're pretty much going to put them in every single steel or amethyst deck, whereas Hiram is causing a lot more of, well, an oppressive meta really, because rather than pairing Sapphire with something like Amethyst to provide yourself with card draw, there's literally no reason to do that. You've got all the card draw you could possibly wish for with Hiram, so of course instead you're going to be pairing Sapphire with Steel for control or Ruby for control. And that doesn't really help maintain the balance of the ink colors and what they're supposed to do. Sapphire's not supposed to have the best card draw tool in the game. That's supposed to belong to Amethyst. Sapphire's supposed to be about ramping predominantly. And okay, Hiram is a fun and interesting card with item synergy, but it was just too good. And we will be taking a look perhaps in the stream we do later on today, looking at other card draw options for Sapphire, because it does mention here that in a few hours time there is going to be an open letter to the community from Steve Warner, so we are going to be looking through that on a live stream later on today. If you want to join us, that's going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from Steve Warner and watching that, and then just discussing all of this with the community. So the change is effective immediately, which I think is great, because we've got set champs coming up in the not too distant future, and I think that it's completely going to shake everything up. Like, fundamentally, the game has changed with this one single change. Of course, Fortisphere has also been banned, and we will talk about that, but Hiram is really the big one. If you look at what some of the best performing decks are of the last couple sets, it's been Ruby Sapphire, and Hiram Flavisham has been a mainstay in those decks. So suddenly those Ruby Sapphire decks, which have just been that mainstay, that kind of a looming shadow over every single Disney Lorcana tournament. Whenever I play in a Lorcana tournament, I always want to play a deck which can beat Ruby Sapphire, because I know it's going to be everywhere and I know it's hard to beat. Well, suddenly, the Ruby Sapphire decks have got a significant nerf in losing this card, and they might have to reimagine themselves in a different way, and therefore they should become significantly more beatable without having to go complete aggro mode. Added to that, discard decks, which in my opinion are a really healthy part of the game to keep the balance of everything in order, have struggled quite a bit in recent times. And Hiram Flavisham has always been a discard player's worst nightmare because it's hard to remove and it draws a ton of cards. Well, suddenly with Hiram Flavisham being gone on the chopping block, I think discard decks can definitely make a bit of a resurgence. And I'm not just talking about Emerald Steel. I think Amber Emerald, I think also Emerald Sapphire with Bend to My Will are decks which have suddenly a lot more interesting options, because also Hiram going, right, you've got Amethyst as the inherent card draw, You've got also some card draw options if you pair Sapphire with Emerald, with things like Clarabelle. Decks like that are suddenly a lot more interesting, and there's suddenly a lot more big reason to actually play those. And I think that this Hiram ban is going to be bringing a lot of the Sapphire decks closer to each other in power level. And I think that's where the Fortosphere ban comes into it. Fortosphere has died for Bell's sins. Let's be very clear. And while I think that's a shame, I don't really think it matters that much. I don't think that anyone's going to be up in arms. Oh my goodness, the Fortosphere's gone. Bell is a problem with Let the Storm Rage on and Strength of a Raging Fire, and you can still play Bell in those decks. It's just going to be less consistent. I think what the devs recognized was that if you ban Hiram and you just leave Fortosphere where it is, people are still going to be heavily playing Sapphire Steel as the main deck. Instead of Flavisham, you play Doc. The deck probably doesn't change all that much. And frankly, people will still play that deck and it will still be strong, but you've now only got the Porpsicles and you haven't got the Fortospheres as well, so it decreases the consistency. I actually think it's a really nice change. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind about Sapphire Steel is you've got other card draw options. You've got Cheacher, for example, who's a 2-cost card. The second time you ink a card in a turn, you can draw. You've got a whole new world as well. So you've definitely got, you've got Doc, Beast, you've got all kinds of other interesting card draw options in Sapphire Steel, which suddenly become a lot more interesting to explore. Excuse me, I'm a little bit poorly at the moment. Tamatoa is in free fall a little bit in the market. That's a little bit hyperbolic, but it was peaking at £54, £53.5 just a few days ago, and it is now down at about 40 quid. And you would imagine it's going to continue to drop quite quickly. But I do think Tamatoa will still be a pretty good card. And shout out to Card Market who do sponsor this video. I also want to mention this weekend, it should be a new meta, and I am going to be casting a big tournament in Germany, in Leipzig, April 12th to 13th. That is this weekend. It's going to be on the Ultimate Guard Twitch channel on both Saturday and Sunday. And based off this announcement, it should be a Hiram-less tournament, which makes it really very exciting. Excited to be back casting some Disney Lorcana, which I always love to do very much indeed. So that is the news. Hiram banned, Fortosphere banned. Porpsicle, a lot of people are going to ask why not Porpsicle, and that's a fair question. I think that Porpsicle has is a better card than Fortosphere, and I think it's probably best we wait for what Steve Warner's got to say. I mean, I could definitely make some assumptions. You know, you've got cards like Nick Wilde, for example, that have direct synergy with Porpsicle. If you ban Porpsicle, you're going to have to get rid of him as well, technically. I just think that it's Fortosphere specifically is nerfing Sapphire Steel. Hiram is nerfing all Sapphire decks, whereas like maybe it's unnecessary to also ban Porpsicle, because if you ban Porpsicle, it's going to ruin Tamatoa, whereas then like the only way you would play Tamatoa is in Sapphire Steel. So basically it's like you ban either Porpsicle or you ban Fortosphere, I think is the discussion that the devs are probably having. And they came to the conclusion that if you ban Porpsicle, it's really going to push the player base towards Sapphire Steel. Whereas if you ban Fortosphere, it really, while people will still play Sapphire Steel, it's really going to keep people interested in trying out more wide variety of Sapphire decks. Overall, huge fan of these changes. I have to say, big pat on the back from me to Ravensburger for these decisions, for acting quickly and for the good of the game and the player base. I, for one, am now really excited to start playing some more Disney Lorcana in this meta and trying to crack what the best decks in the game are. As I mentioned, I will be live shortly after this video, probably a little bit before 1 p.m. Pacific time, to start discussing this with the community. Maybe we could have a few guests on and have some chats with members of the community about these changes, listen to what Steve Warner's got to say, and I suppose we can start building some decks, some Hiramless decks, and start getting an idea of what we think the meta might look like. So I, for one, am a huge fan of these changes, monumentally huge fan of these changes, to be completely honest. I think it's really, really positive news. So, yep, I'm a chuffed chuffed man, although slightly ill. But looking forward to discussing more on the live stream in a few hours. Thanks again to Card Market for sponsoring the stream. Don't forget to check out the Oslo Meisterschaft in Leipzig this weekend. It's going to be really awesome production quality. It's going to be a really great event that you definitely don't want to miss out on. Excited to be working with Leo and Will. And hopefully see you there, and hopefully see you in the live stream in just a little while. Bye, Hiram. I'm not going to miss you.